Hello, my name is Kent Field, and thank you for tuning into this YouTube channel, The Bible versus Opinions. God bless you in your search for the truth. While all people have opinions on many subjects, including the Bible and religion, not all opinions carry the same weight or value. For example, would you go to a plumber for his advice on brain surgery? Would you go to a mechanic for his advice on heart surgery? The point is, not all opinions carry the same weight or value on a particular subject. That's why I'm not offering you my mere opinion, but Bible answers alone. So here's the challenge. Are you open to learning beyond your current understanding and knowledge of the Bible? If so, then this channel is for you. If these studies have helped you to grow in your understanding of the Bible, or even life itself, please like and subscribe and share this channel with others so that they too may be challenged and grow in their understanding of the scriptures.
That's what he's saying. Sanctified, verse 14 of chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified or made different or set apart. That's the definition of the word hagios. Only the context will determine how you translate that. Okay, you can set something apart for this reason or that reason. You can make it holy unto the Lord. You can make it sanctified, meaning made special. They're being made special. For otherwise your children were unclean, but now they are holy or set apart. They're different. Why? Because they're exposed to you. That's why you're not supposed to send them away. One of the reasons. The other reason is the fact that you are married. But if you had this question about, if you have an unbeliever as a mate, whether your wife or your husband, you don't have to send them away. You should keep them. Why? If they're pleased to dwell with you, let them stay. Don't send them away. Don't divorce. Yet, he knows that some are not pleased to dwell with you. Remember that concession again? Yet, if the unbelieving one leaves, chorizo, that is divorces, let him leave. It's imperative in the mood. It's in an imperative mood, meaning of a permission. Like, let it be so, or let it be done. Let him leave. When you read that in the Greek, it's like, they want a divorce, let him divorce. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases. But God has called us to peace. Now, see, Jesus didn't talk about this at all. This is in what's called, is not under bondage, is in what's called in Greek, the negative perfect tense. It doesn't always mean never. It doesn't always mean never. The negative perfect doesn't always mean never, but in the perfect result of past completed action, and is only indicated by the context. That's a lot of Greek stuff. How can I explain that? A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases. Doesn't mean that when they're not pleased to dwell, bang, the bond is over, the marriage bond's over. You still have a choice. And go ahead.
Your choice. Here I am, a believing woman. My husband is leaving me because he doesn't want to have anything to do with Christianity or me. The only way I could get him back is to leave Christianity. And God says, don't do it.
Right. And that's what he's going to say in the next verse. For how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband by giving into him and not letting him leave and clinging to his ankles and saying, all right, I won't worship Christ anymore or whatever, and just hang around? How do you know you're going to win him? It's only if they're pleased to dwell with you, you can stay with them and they can stay with you. But the Lord didn't address this question. What about marriage to an unbeliever? And they're not pleased to dwell with you. He says to do what? Verse 15.
Let them leave.
Let them leave. You're not under bondage. But how do you know, O wife, whether you will win your husband? And how do you know, O husband, whether you'll save your wife? You know, you might think you're going to compromise the faith and ultimately you'll win them. So don't do that. Don't do that. You're a Christian, you're a believer, and they don't want to live with you anymore. Let them leave. Now, if they're pleased to dwell with you, live with them in such a way that they may be won without a word, even Peter said, right? Only as the Lord has assigned to each one, as God has called each, in this manner let him walk. And thus I direct in all the churches. I say this to everybody, is what he's saying. As who? As just Paul?
As an apostle.
As an apostle and as what? As I direct in all the churches. What does that mean? I'm writing the Lord's command. I'm comparing spiritual thoughts with spiritual words. This is a Pauline exception. But that's what they call that in verses 12 through 16. They call that the Pauline exception for the unbeliever. It's not a Pauline exception.
I don't understand that. Like, if I could just interject real quick, like, even if you were to take it the opposite way, like if you were to interpret this saying that I say, not the Lord, that this is Paul's opinion, this section, say verse 12 through verse 16, even if that were the case, what is the exception? You're still not allowed to leave your wife. The only, like I don't even understand what the argument would be. Like,
well, because under what Jesus was teaching had nothing to do with believer versus unbeliever. It was the fact that it was fornication versus no fornication in divorcing and putting somebody away for a reason.
Right, but this is still, you're not allowed to put your wife or your husband away. There's no exception here. The only thing is that if they leave you, let them leave. But
right,
you're not allowed. You're still not allowed to leave them. So where's the exception?
But because the question is, can they get remarried then? If they're not under bondage.
Yeah.
See, that's why they call it the Pauline exception. Otherwise, under what Jesus said, if you're divorced for any other reason.
Well, no, even under Jesus.
Fornication, hang on. If you're divorced for any other reason but for fornication,
you're an adulterer.
You marry another, you're committing adultery. And if they are divorced for any other reason, you make them as an adulteress.
Right. Okay. But let's say, forget the unbeliever part. Let's say your wife leaves you and you let her leave. Are you under the impression that she goes and lives a celibate life?
No, that's not the point.
It's absolutely the point. She is obviously going to fornicate with someone else, in which case you are allowed to remarry.
No, I would still say that in this case, Dad, with the
no, because it has to be for the cause of fornication. If you got a divorce for
but it would be. So
who said divorce? Wait, you're not listening to what I'm saying. If she leaves you, there's no divorce. She leaves you.
But that's what he's discussing here. When he says leaves, he's talking about corrido. It's a divorce. She's separating, meaning gone.
She's doing it to you. You have no part in it. She is then going to be with someone else, which lets you then remarry.
Now, if you're divorcing her for the cause of fornication, not because of incompatibility,
But who said that?
not because she burned the supper.
Yeah, nobody's saying that. Just because
Nobody's
the
saying-
Who said that?
Right. No, but I'm saying that people, Jesus was discussing, what Jesus discussed was for a divorce for any cause other than fornication. And you marry another, you're an adulterer.
right, I would still say that potentially, certainly potentially, I would say mostly applies here. The same thing. I would say if your unbelieving spouse walks out on you, that's not free reign for you to immediately get remarried.
But he's saying they are not under bondage in such cases now.
Yeah, but they can come back. You can be reconciled.
No,
Just
but
because
that wasn't talking
but
about
if
the
a bond-
unbeliever there.
If a bond is broken,
that would
it's
be by the
broken.
fornication.
no, it's
No.
broken because this unbeliever won't stay with you. If the bond is broken, it's broken for both people. It's not broken for one.
Yeah, but so the problem with this is the problem with that interpretation is you can have a really bad fight and you could say all kinds of bad words and a wife could say, I'm leaving you, and she leaves.
Right.
That's not a license to immediately go get remarried, I don't think.
No, it isn't.
Because you can just have a bad fight and a couple of months can go by and then you guys reconcile.
Yes, but he's discussing an unbeliever not being consent to live with a believer. That's the subject here. It's believer versus unbeliever. Before that, it was divorce and remarriage as the Lord directed. So the Lord directed it as it's a very simple thing, that the man should not divorce his wife and they should remain unmarried or else be reconciled. And he should not send his wife away. That's the way it's deserved. One man for one woman for life. That's the way it was. That's
right.
The design. Now, he says, now to the rest, I'm going to address this question about you believers. He said, now, if they're pleased to dwell with you, then hang out, stay married. Don't send away. Man or woman, either way, they both, by the way, have equal rights and position in this whole discussion. Notice it was both husband and wife sending away, husband and wife remaining, or wife remaining unmarried, or etc. You understand? It was discussed from both ways, of both sides, all the way through. But then he says, why? He gives them a reason. Because they're exposed to you. Verse 14. And your kids are exposed to you. You should be having an influence on them and the kids.
Yeah,
That's
this is
verse 14.
interesting because verse 10 and 11. So that directive
Was from Matthew.
So she's not to leave her husband.
Yes.
But if she does leave, she must remain unmarried or else be reconciled.
That's why I'm saying it's not an exception.
Right, because she wasn't put away for fornication.
Right, but of course you're going to let her leave. What is the alternative? You're going to chain her to the wall? If she wants to leave, you'd have to let her leave.
No, yeah, but there's a difference. In that case, we're talking about you compromising you. That's why he says that in verse 16. How do you know, O wife, and how do you know, O man, whether you're going to convert them? So it was a choice that you had to make. If you didn't let them leave, how were you not letting them leave? You were compromising yourself, trying to save them. Verse 16, he's telling them, how do you know whether you're going to convert them? Let them leave. Well, how would you not let them leave? Verse 16, how would you not let them leave? How do you know whether you're going to convert them? How do you know whether you'll save them? No, you got to answer that question. What does verse 16 answer? Yet the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. Well, how would they stop him? You're saying they couldn't stop him. But Paul's saying, oh, yeah, you could. Let him leave. So how would they stop him?
By going over the top, pleading with them and trying to force them to
Verse
stay.
16, with a view toward trying to reach them beyond what you should by compromising yourself. he's saying, verse 15, let them leave. Why? For how do you know whether you're going to convert them, save them? How do you know whether you're going to save her? By what? By not letting them leave. But how would you not let them leave? Like you asked the question, how are they going to stop him? Well, there must have been some way, because he said, let him do it. Now, how would they not let them leave? I'll give you plenty of illustrations of that. Look, if it's going to upset you, I won't go to church. Don't leave. Don't do that. Let them leave, because you're not gonna save them that way anyway. Let them go. But how would you not let them go? You still haven't asked that question. Answered. And once you answer that question, you'll get the answer to why he says, verse 16. How would you not let them go? How would you not let them leave?
By trying to persuade them to stay.
But how? They're not content to live with you. They're unbelievers and they want to leave.
Because it would be an argument that could eventually.
They're sick and tired of hearing about.
Like
they're sick and tired of hearing about Jesus and you having to go to church and fellowship with brethren and follow the apostles' doctrine, fellowship, breaking of bread.
I think it just means let them leave. Just means give up on trying to force them.
How do you know? Trying to what? That's verse 16. And how do you know, old man, whether you're going to save them? By what? But I've seen too many people how they do it. The husband doesn't like them going to fellowships on Wednesdays and Sundays and Fridays. So whatever. You know what they do?
No, I get what you're saying. I just don't see how anyone thinks they're saving someone that way. They're saving their relationship by falling away.
You haven't been in that position then, because I've seen it. I've seen it in my own family.
No, I know it happens, but they're saving the relationship. They're not saving their souls.
No, but they think they will. They think that by compromising their faith for the now and for the time being and backing off, they go along to get along.
Oh, and you mean that eventually they'll be able to bring them back?
For example.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Dad, it's not that what you're saying doesn't potentially make sense. It's just not. It doesn't seem like the straightforward way that this should be understood, in my view. That's all.
All right. No, the way I'm looking at it is, and I'll go through it really quick now. How do they think that they would win them if they didn't let them go? Because that's the question. How did they think they were going to win them and save them in verse 16 by not letting them go? He's not under bondage. They had a question about this. Is a Christian bound to an unbeliever who wants to leave? And what should I do? And I know that there are people who are, for example, the Hebrew Christians, they were giving up on the assembling of themselves together to go back. Why? Because of pressure. Do you think it's pressure from just the people in the temple, or maybe from loved ones too and family? The number one pressure you get. That's why he's going to say in verse 17, only as the Lord has assigned to each one, as God has called each, in this manner let him walk. Some people have then therefore said, if you were married to an unbeliever, then you're not under bondage. Or if you've been divorced already, that's where God called you, so now you're divorced, and then now you can just get married again. Doesn't matter about Matthew 19. You don't have to pay attention to that. Or Matthew 5:32. Doesn't matter. Doesn't apply anymore.
But this doesn't say that. You are under bondage. You can't send your unbelieving wife away.
Right.
The only way you're not under bondage is if she leaves you.
Right. That's why he said, I'm addressing this. The Lord didn't.
But if they're no longer under bondage, he is talking about the marriage bond.
Yes.
Yes.
And now
Agreed.
they're no longer under bondage. They separated, and that's why the Lord didn't address that particular thing.
Right. He never addressed that part.
Well,
He addressed the fornication part.
Under the old covenant, those types of marriages were unlawful to begin with, right?
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with this either.
That's why Jesus wouldn't have addressed it, because Jesus is talking old covenant, like you already couldn't be
right, and from the garden, right from the Garden of Eden. right from the garden. Jesus is addressing from the beginning. He made the male and female. That's what he's referring to. That's God's rule for marriage. Now, he didn't address the believer versus unbeliever in his ministry. He didn't. So Paul's addressing that on behalf of Christ right here. And he's saying, look, if the unbelieving, if they want to stay with you, let them stay. Don't send them away. Because your husband or your wife and your kids are now exposed to you. They're made different. They're different from any other couple, any other person, any other child in the world, because they're in a household with a Christian, a believer, exposed to the gospel. Now, if they want to leave, let them leave. Because you don't know that you're going to win them by not letting them leave. Serious, that's all there is. And how would they stop them? They would compromise the faith. That's why he says, only as the Lord has assigned to each one, as God has called, in that manner let him walk, and thus I direct. How has God called you? In that manner let him walk. Only as God has called. That's the end of the chapter, not the beginning of the next one. Only as God has assigned to each one, as God has called each, he's assigned, he's called, let him walk in that manner. And thus I directed all. In what manner? How has he called them? Whether they're married or unmarried, to a believer or to an unbeliever.
Yes, but he goes on and he starts talking about, were you called as a slave? Like that doesn't end the chapter. He goes under.
Right. It's not really ending the chapter, the paragraph either.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I would imagine this is
called already as circumcised. Let him not become uncircumcised. Has anyone been called an uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing. So, what is he talking them to? How do you know you're going to win them? By not keeping God's commands, by compromising the faith, you would not be faithful. To try to keep them from leaving. Don't let them leave. Don't give up on Christ. Be faithful. Keep God's commands. Verse 19. That's what he's constantly calling them to, faithful. Anyway, we're going to end this and we're going to continue next week. It's a tough one. I knew. This is going to be rough, and we're not done yet on this.
I mean, I don't think it's tough. I just. You
don't have to agree with me. Read it. I'm going to ask you to do this. Read it and ask the questions. How?
It's not even a matter of disagreement, because the disagreement is minuscule. It's just, but in that case, then it is an exception. See, I'm saying that I don't.
Yes, there is a Pauline exception. There is. For there are people who might want to not be with an unbeliever. Verse 12.
Right.
They don't want to be with an unbeliever. He's saying, don't send her away because
you might convert her.
They could be saved by being with you.
Because you might convert them.
Right.
How do you know whether you're going to save them?
Yet if they want to leave, let them leave, because you don't know that you'd save them. Wait a minute. You just told me that my exposure to them might save them.
Right. It goes both ways.
But now you're telling me if they want to leave, let them leave. How could you prevent them from leaving?
But it's a two-way street. The same way that
you didn't answer the question. How could you prevent them from leaving?
So they were staying together, you're saying, because they wanted to save them.
Right. She'd just stay and compromise her faith or his faith to stay with them to try to reach them. And he's saying, listen, I know that they're sanctified, but if they want to leave, if they're pleased to dwell with you, stay with them. But if they want to leave, let them leave. You don't know whether that's going to happen.
Right. And you can't let them corrupt you.
And you can't let them drag you down. How do you know? So he's saying that, but how could they have prevented them from leaving then? By letting them drag you down, by compromising your faith, your faithfulness, how God has called you.
Maybe their thing was, I'm going to win them without a word. So
Right.
I don't want to separate from him because I'm going to win him without a word, even though he doesn't want to live with me because I'm a Christian.
I'll
I'm going
get
to
him.
win him
I'll
without a word.
get him to stay if I agree not to go to Sunday nights. If I agree not to open the Bible when he's around.
Right, but then you can't win them without a word. How do you win by example when you stop
Hang
setting the example?
Hang on. By their
No
chaste
longer setting the
behavior.
example.
That's all he said. By their chaste, without a word. Without a word.
That's what I'm saying.
Without a word. It's by their behavior only. Now,
Right, but now
listen.
you're changing your behavior. You're
Yes.
no longer going.
So but you're changing. You're not being as faithful in fellowship. You're not going to prayer meetings. You're not.
Right. So you're no longer
you're
setting
not-
the example.
You're compromising. You're not setting a good example. I agree.
So
And
how
that's
do you
why he
save
says,
them by
let him
example?
go. It ain't worth it. You
Right.
don't know the outcome.
Right.
That's why he says, let him go. You don't know by staying with him. Now, first he says, stay with them. If they're pleased to dwell with you, who knows? You could win them. Then he turns around and says, but if they don't want to stay with you, let them go. You don't know that you're going to win them.
Well, they could try
Ah,
to convince them to stay. That's all.
wow. If they're
Different
an
ways.
unbeliever and they don't want to stay with a believer, how are you going to convince them? Because that's how they're going to stop them from leaving. You answered my question. I've seen this happen hundreds and hundreds of times in my short experience. Hundreds of times for hundreds of couples over the years. And I've seen where eventually the husband says, I'm not putting up with this because you're staying faithful. I've seen others, they'll come Sunday morning, but that's it. Why? The husband don't have a problem. All right, I got a problem with it, but okay. But the Sunday night stuff, and then Wednesday night, and then Friday night, and then you go into a prayer service, a woman's meeting. Forget it. It's too much. I can't deal with this. All right, I'll stop. I'll back off of that. You saying she shouldn't do that. I agree. But they do. And so how do they prevent them from leaving? By giving in. And by thinking, you got to answer the question, let him leave. Why did he say that? He didn't say, if the unbeliever leaves, he left. He's gone. He didn't say that. He said, let him leave. And if the unbelieving woman wants to leave, she left. No, it says, let her leave. Why is he saying that? How could they stop him? How are you going to not let them leave? However you do that, why would you not let them leave? That's the next verse. How do you know you're going to save them? Well, I wanted to save them. You just told me they're exposed to me. Yeah, but not if you're unfaithful. Not if you're not at your strongest. Because God has called us to do what? But God, you're not under bondage because God has called us to peace. Whatever way that you think you're going to do it, you're not going to save them that way.
Right. You're going to save them by verse 14.
Right.
It just makes,
they might argue
it makes
that
so much sense that way.
But that's why he brings up the other part where he says, well, what if they don't want to leave? They're not happy to stay. Well, let them leave because you don't know if you're going to win them then. Ultimately, it's not a done deal. They're sanctified, but they're not saved. Right? They were sanctified, but they're not saved. Verse 14.
Yeah, but let them leave. You don't know how you're going to save them. Doesn't make any sense.
No, you don't know that you would. Whether you would save them.
Right.
By what? By what? Whether you would save them. By what? By
your
staying with
example.
them. By not letting them leave. By not letting them leave. How would you know? By not letting them leave. But how would you stop them from leaving? I'm just asking questions going backwards now. Anyway, we're going to end this and we're going to continue next week.
Thanks for being a part of that study segment. I promise you that, Lord willing, there's more to come. With the understanding that the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure, many of these studies have been broken up into a series of bite-sized segments. So be sure to look for the next segment in each Bible study subject, so you won't miss out on any important information. Please like and subscribe if you feel that this lesson's helped you, and God bless you in your search for truth.